All right, welcome to another episode of the Attorney Lounge. I want to thank my guest, Russell Hill, for joining us here in the Attorney Lounge. Thanks, Russell, for joining me.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here and share a little bit about my background with you guys.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. I know you have a, a, a really interesting background, interesting career, and typically on the show we kind of run, from your background, kind of up through present day and kind of what you're doing today. And so I think, let's kind of start from there because before you were an attorney, you were in the military and you had an interesting career there. But actually, wait, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I want to talk a little bit about kind of where you grew up too, because we kind of had a little bit of a similar background in terms of a blue collar background. So tell us a little bit about kind of how you grew up and eventually kind of lead into like your military career and how you came to the law in the first place.
Sure, I was the youngest of eight in a family with six boys and two girls. So I had five older brothers, two older sisters, and my parents were very blue collar. In fact, my mom didn't work outside of the home. My dad was a crane operator at Kennecott Copper Mine in Utah in the Salt Lake Valley, and he did that for 42 years. So he
Wow.
kept at it, and he provided for the family. But I got to say, we were living off of good economics, home economics by my mom. She stitched and patched everything possible, and my dad, he would work extra jobs, when we'd have a big need for money, but we were able to get by, and he raised all eight kids, and
Yep.
kept us fairly healthy. So I
Yeah.
think he did a great job in that respect. On the
Yep.
downside, though, is that education wasn't at all emphasized in my home. In
hmm
fact, it was. The goal was to get on at the plant, to get out there at Kennecott and get on. And I actually had three brothers who took that career path. And
Wow.
so,
Interesting. Yeah.
no one excelled in high school. I was a horrible high school student. I graduated with like a 2.3 GPA, and it was the military that helped me get enough credits to graduate. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I actually went to Army boot camp, not Marine Corps yet.
hmm
Between my junior and senior year of high school, they had a National Guard unit in my area, the 19th Special Forces Group. So it was a Green Beret unit, and I
hmm
was so enamored with Rambo back then. It was the early 80s, and it just
Right.
come out. Like, oh man, I want to be a Rambo. So
Yep. Yep.
I signed up, and I went to Army boot camp, and that wasn't too difficult. So
hmm
came home from that and finished my high school uh, out. But then as soon as I graduated, in fact, before I even had my graduation ceremony, I had to be on an airplane to go to Fort Benning, Georgia, to go to jump school and jump out of airplanes for the first time. So
Jeez.
back to back to back, I did jump school, and then I did my specialty training, which was communications for a Green Beret A team. That was the goal, and then I went to
hmm
Special Forces School at Fort Bragg, North Carolina,
hmm
and that's how I got my kickstart in the military. I
Gosh.
was in the National Guard for nearly 4 years, and
Okay.
I had I had taken the last year and a half of that time inactive to do a Mormon mission, if you can believe it. I was
Yeah.
a missionary. I went from military, came home for like a month or two. Then I was in Germany pounding on doors, 12 to 15 hours a day. It was just quite the
Jeez.
quite the grinding experience to go through all that.
You were a busy kid. I mean, physically
I
pretty
had to keep up
demanding,
for
you
high
know?
school.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What I mean, did you grow up playing sports? Were you sort of like physically active? I mean, you said it
I
was kind of
was.
easy for you. I would think that being in the green, like, was it the Green Berets that you were a
Yeah.
member of? That's got to be incredibly physically demanding.
It was very physically demanding, but I was really prepared for it by my home unit. I'd had all from the boot camp until I left at the end of the school year to get ready. And they
hmm
had me out, doing 10-mile, 15-mile marches with big packs on my back and running and running and running. And
Jeez.
so by the time I got to airborne school, they had a 2 mile physical fitness test back then. You had to run 2 miles in 16 minutes. I did it in less than 11 minutes. So
Wow.
I could do a sub 6 mile no problem. In fact, I could do 15. I'm sorry, a 5K in about 18 minutes flat was where I was
That's
at.
pretty good. That's pretty
Yeah.
good.
So
What about jumping out of airplanes? I mean, what was that? I mean, did you have any issues with that?
it was quite the experience because I was really afraid of heights before I went. And I
Wow.
still am when I'm on the edge of something looking down.
Mm-hmm.
I always get that sort of dizzy feeling
Mm-hmm.
and feel like the vertigo I'm going to fall.
Yep.
But
Yep.
when I was up in the airplane for the first time, they opened the doors and it just didn't look real because it's so far down.
Right.
And everything just clicks, 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 and you're jumping out, and before you know it, you're floating down like a bird, and it's wonderful. So,
That's pretty impressive. I'll tell you a quick story. My brother jumped out of an airplane. I would never do that, but my oldest brother jumps out of an airplane, and the first time he had done it several times. The first time he did it, he pulls the chute. He gets his arm caught in the string, broke his arm,
oh man.
and ended up he floated like way off course. And we're like, why is he going over there? We come to find out he got his arm caught in the string or whatever and broke his arm while he was coming down. Any crazy stories of like I mean, or did you just like pick it up seamlessly?
Well, in jump school I didn't have any problems at all, but I'll tell you, I had a night jump with combat gear on, so we were practicing. Of course, it was at the Special Forces unit in Utah, and we went up in an Air Force piloted C-130, and the pilot I think he messed up. He ended up in a court martial for this actually. He put in the data wrong for the landing point. And so when we were coming into land, it was a dark drop zone, no lights at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just an automatic drop. And he put us out. And it was nighttime. And at night, you've got to watch the horizon really carefully. And as it gets up to about your eye level, you have these tethers that are attached to your pack and your rifle and everything. You
Mm-hmm.
pull up on it and it drops and it hangs about 15 feet below you on a nylon strap.
Okay.
So it hits the ground first, takes the pressure off, and then you land.
Okay.
It's
I think
about
I've seen
100.
that when people do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
115 pounds, and you don't want to ride that into the ground. That will really
Wow.
hurt you.
Yeah.
And I'm coming down, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and it's not getting any closer. And I'm like, what? And all of a sudden, I just hit.
Oh my
Just
God.
without any warning, just a solid slam. I knocked the wind out of me. I'm on my back, and I can hardly breathe. And I'm wondering if my back's broke or what, and I'm
Yep.
feeling around. I can feel everything. Okay. Start to move, and I'm really hurting, but it's not too bad. Get
Mm-hmm.
up, and I ended up with, a broken rib and a lot of bruising from my tailbone all the way to my neck.
Yep. Oh
What
my
had
God.
happened? He had put us out on the side of a mountain, not a ridge, but a foothill that came up to a ridge, and we were up on the higher part of it. And we should have been on a nice
Right.
flat drop area, and so I rode that equipment
Jeez.
into the ground, got hurt bad, but that night it was as bad as being in any kind of a major highway accident with casualties everywhere or a combat a
Yeah.
firefight, whatever, because
Yep.
we had about 20 guys just bloodied beyond belief from the rocks they landed in.
Oh
One guy
man.
had his knee actually come off, his kneecap come off and rip. Another guy had a
Mm.
broken back and he ended up with a spinal injury.
Oh man.
I helped a guy. I gave him first aid who his helmet had been pushed back and he hit a rock and it had cut his head open and cracked his skull. And talk about blood.
Jeez.
We're trying to keep him from bleeding out.
Oh my God.
It was crazy, and we got everybody off that drop zone, and everyone was like, "That pilot did something wrong," and
Yep.
so then they started doing the investigation, and sure enough, that's what it was.
Jeez. So when something like that happens, I mean, is it is it kind of literally like riding a horse? You just got to get right back on and go back to it, or
Yeah. So it wasn't long after that we were jumping into Hawaii, We flew out there to train on Oahu, and into a nice pineapple patch, thick Hawaiian air. It was comfortable landing and no problem. So yeah, I mean, you never know what you're going to get.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So in the middle, and so back to this. So in the middle of your military career, you end up doing your mission. Do you
Yeah.
then come back to the military after your mission is over as well?
Yeah, right. So as soon as I got home, I was right back into the National Guard unit there in Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and training, and I had done a major exercise with the Marines out in Kaneohe Bay. We flew out there and had a force-on-force night, simulated warfare with them. And I
Mm-hmm.
was so impressed with the Marines out there, and I was like, man, these guys are so much more disciplined than we are. They look better, and they did really well against us. And we were a bunch of sneaky, basically
Yeah.
cheaters. I mean, snake-eating cheaters is what they call us.
That's funny.
So a Marine Corps recruiter had been talking to me, and I started talking to him more after that, and he got me really interested in making a transfer over. And I bit the bullet in April of 1986 and went back to boot camp.
Oh my God. So is
After
that
all that
basically
training, yeah,
that's like starting over? I guess you just
it
start
is.
over.
It was
At,
starting over. Only
Jeez.
a little bit worse because the Marine Corps, they really think they're the best of the best of the best, and
Right.
all
Yeah.
other services are just horrible. Anyway, when they found out I was a prior service Army guy and that I'd been in an elite unit, man, they rode me so hard in boot
Oh,
camp.
really?
It was unbelievable. They
So
ran
it didn't benefit you. They worked you even harder, huh?
well, they choose one recruit to be the leader, the platoon leader for the recruits, and they're basically in charge when the drill instructors are not around. They keep order and discipline, and you basically get punished if everyone else messes up. So you're
Oh man.
constantly, yelling at folks and straightening them out. And so I was doing that duty plus, getting punished for everybody and doing my own stuff. I was a busy guy. And then when
Wow.
we graduated, on my they award what they call the honor graduate, so it's the top recruit out of the platoon. They made me the honor graduate, which was great, which is a promotion plus a free set of the Marine Corps dress blues, which are just gorgeous uniform.
Very
And you
cool.
get to wear that to graduation, and the rest of the platoon has to wear the green, right? So
Okay. So you
yeah,
stood
I'm all
out.
distinguished out there, and mom and dad
Yeah.
see me like, oh, So that was
That's
a
really
big
cool.
benefit. But the
Yep.
drill instructors were so upset that I would pin my Army, my jump wings and my the medals I had gotten on my chest, on my dress blues. You're not going to put that Army trash on my Marine Corps beautiful blues, are you?
That's pretty common, isn't it? Like I know my dad was in the Navy, and he always thinks the Navy's the best. It's kind of common, right, for
Yeah,
each
yeah,
branch to sort of
definitely. Team
That's cool.
spirit.
So then you graduate. Then what was your Marine career like? How did that go?
Yeah, that went funny. I mean, I started off in the infantry, and apparently they had a big need for radar systems technicians that could troubleshoot and fix the systems. And so I guess they scoured the test scores of everybody, and I don't know how many units, but I got called into the first sergeant's office, and I sat down, and he started talking to me and where I came from and stuff. He says, "Well, I looked at your test scores, and you're pretty smart." Like, what?
Yeah, you're like I graduated with like a 2 point something in high school. What are you talking about?
He goes, no. These are higher than a lot of officers. Trust me, you're way up there. And I said, oh, no. He said, the Marine Corps really needs you. They need you to go into this field. It's a vital need, and there's a critical shortage. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And they sent me to 2 years of electronics and training.
Okay.
So it's basically the equivalent of the first 2 years of college. It's the math and all the way up to calculus, and
Yep.
then the circuits. Nothing to the design level, but certainly understanding chips and digital logic and all that stuff inside and out.
Yep.
RF signals and how to modulate all that. The whole 9 yards. And so I ended up doing really well in there, and and got to pick my duty station. So I picked Camp Pendleton, California, right there by the ocean, and
Nice.
where I
Yeah.
served in the Fleet Marine Force Pacific. And
Hmm.
our areas of responsibility mainly were Korea in case of an invasion,
Hmm.
backing up the Second Marines in Okinawa.
Okay.
So that was our rapid reaction area, and of
Hmm.
course the Western Pacific, floats to between China and Taiwan and all that fun stuff. So
Yep. Yep.
it was an exciting, always on the go type of job there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, and because this all leads to, ultimately sort of you end up getting your degree right while you're in the
Yeah, yeah.
military. And were you getting like actual college credit for that work that you were doing?
I did.
Yeah.
I got full credit for it. The military has a college equivalency, like a credentialing
Hmm.
relationship where they go and they look at the classes and they decide
Hmm.
how much credit will be awarded
Okay.
if you
And
transfer to a college. And that's what I did.
yeah.
And so I ended up graduating from Chapman College in Orange, California.
Hmm.
I was stationed at El Toro Marine Corps Air Base at the
Hmm.
time, which is very close to Orange, and
Yep.
so
Okay.
I was able to finish while I was in.
So, at what point, we've talked about this before, but I don't recall, but at some point then, you did well in college. How did the whole sort of idea of going to law school, that came up while you were in the military, didn't it?
Yeah, so I was trying to plan what I was going to do when I got out,
Hmm.
because I was coming up towards the end of my 6 year enlistment, so that was the end of it.
Hmm.
I take that back. I had a 4 year enlistment, and then I re-enlisted for two, and so I was 2 years into my re-enlistment.
Okay.
And we had Desert Storm,
Hmm.
and my job field was eliminated at the end of Desert Storm. The new guidance systems on the F-18s were so good they didn't need the radar to take them into bomb anymore. We were the
Oh,
strike controlling radars up front that were taking control of the aircraft and putting the bombs on target.
wow.
So
Okay.
they offered me a lateral move to be in remotely piloted vehicles, which we all now know as drones,
Hmm.
or I could get out, and they would pay me a bonus to get out. Now they
Wow.
paid me a
Interesting.
reenlistment bonus 2 years before, and now they're going to pay me another to get out. Plus, I had the GI Bill. I said, okay, I'm going to go to school and get a master's degree or something. And
Okay.
so I took the GRE, had done well on that, had a teaching fellowship lined up at Baylor University for that,
Hmm.
and then a friend of mine he was a reservist going to college, but a Marine
Hmm.
in the reserve unit that I was then training as a instructor inspector for the Marines, and he said, "Hey, you did pretty well in the GRE. Why don't you take the LSAT?" I'm like, "What? Come on, I couldn't be a lawyer." And he said, "No, no, you should just try it. Just try it." And
Yeah.
so I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And I bought this ARCO study guide. I didn't take any course, or I didn't even know about courses for it. I
Yep.
bought the study guide, and I
Yep.
sat and I studied it as hard as I could, at night for a couple of months. And
Hmm.
then I signed up for the test, and the day came, and I went and I sat down for the first section and started it. It was one of those logic games that made no sense at all.
Yep. Yep.
It was like a three-level multiplayer logic game, and I was like, this is I couldn't figure it out, and I just thought,
Yeah.
well, I bombed it. I'm going to leave
Yep.
when they break for lunch. And so the section ended, and they had a little like 10-minute break, I think it was, and I was about to leave, and then I thought, you know what? If I leave, my wife's going to be so mad. I paid $55 for that admission
Wow.
fee. And we
Yeah.
were broke. Come on,
Yeah.
it's the end of the Marine Corps, and I'm broke.
Yeah.
And so I stuck it out. The
That's amazing.
next section was so easy, and they were all easy after that. I thought, wow, that's really bizarre. Or maybe I really blew it bad.
Uh
So I
huh.
figured, well, it'll be horrible. Started, I got out. I was getting all ready to take off for Waco, Texas, to go to Baylor,
Hmm.
and the scores came. And I had my two boys. They were just like 3 and 2 at the time, and we went out to the mailbox, and we were walking back, and I was opening it. and I saw 99%, and I'm like, oh man, I'm in the bottom 1% of the whole thing. Oh, no way.
Jeez.
I said, well,
Uh-huh.
nobody needs to know about this, and I was going to tear it up, and I looked at it again. I'm like, the raw score was on there, and I only missed 3 questions, and I'm like, what? How can that? Then
That's
I
amazing.
checked it, like, duh. And then yeah, I had no clue what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was higher than the scores where I wanted to go, which was like University of San Diego. Just
Mm-hmm.
we were living down there. My wife was from San Diego, and
Mm-hmm.
so I thought that's where we were headed. And I just happened to be at church, and one of the guys was there who happened to be a professor at USD. I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Hey, I think I might be able to get into your school." And I told him what my scores were, and he just got these big eyes, and he said, "Oh no, Russ, you owe it to yourself and to your family to apply to top 10 law schools. You,
Yeah.
you have to try." I'm like,
That's amazing.
"What?" And so I had that great score, and my GPA from my military time, I was disciplined as can be, so I had a 3.97 in college.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
So you go from a 2 point something in high school to a 3.97 in college and one of the top scores in the country on the
yeah,
LSAT.
yeah. It was
Unbelievable.
it was a door opener too, man. I got waitlisted at Yale. Harvard rejected me. Columbia let me in with a scholarship. NYU, those type
Mm-hmm.
of schools. And then out west, I applied to USC and Berkeley. And
Mm-hmm.
USC offered me a full tuition scholarship, which was awesome, but you had to live in LA, and I wasn't in LA. And
Yep.
then I really started learning more about UC Berkeley and their law program and how high ranked it was and
Mm-hmm.
incredibly respected on the West Coast. And that's where I
Yep.
wanted to live anyway. So I took it, and they gave me a full scholarship. So I had free tuition, and they gave me living stipend as well, which was great. We had little kids,
Wow.
and so I was often running in law school.
That's just amazing to me. Yeah, I mean, Berkeley's one of the best law schools in the country. Full ride, living expenses. I mean, you're off to the races. This has got to be a little bit of an eye opener for you, given your background, coming from blue collar background, military background, and now you're training to be a lawyer with literally some of the most, you know, brilliant students in the country to get into this school, and they're paying you to come there. I mean, what was that like in terms of sort of like a mindset adjustment for the
I
direction your
I
life is
thought
headed?
I thought a big mistake had been made. I really did.
Yeah.
I thought I don't belong here. These guys they're so smart. They know stuff I have no clue about. They've been together in these elite colleges, and I've been in the Marine Corps going to night school. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I felt so out of place. It was really really hard
Yep.
initially to get going.
Did you you were probably a little older coming into law school too? Were a lot of the classmates younger
Yes.
at that time?
Yeah, they
So,
were.
yeah, what was that like? I mean, your adjustment kind of like starting law school and navigating that whole world.
And not only the age difference, but also the background difference, right? I'd been in the military and very, very liberal, a lot of very anti-military folks
Oh yeah.
around. And
Mm-hmm.
so there was just a feeling like, hey, I don't belong and they don't want me here.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it was a lot of adjustments to make, but I soon made friends with people. I got into a study group with one older guy and an older gal who was actually older than me. She was the oldest one in our class. She was 50.
Oh wow. Mm-hmm.
And
Interesting.
yeah, so I felt more at ease with that group and
Yep. Yep.
found my my
Yep.
zen, I guess, in law school. And
Found your groove and found your group and you
I
took off from
did
there.
indeed, yeah.
What was what was that like? Like, tell us a little bit about your career in law school and how you did there.
Well, I poured it on. Of course, I was very disciplined and just going at
Yep.
it. I outlined the classes from start to finish. I did every little thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I killed it.
Yep.
I did
Yep.
great. Yeah,
Yep.
I did really good.
Law review, order of the Coif,
Yes,
all of the top honors.
yes.
Where did you end up finishing there?
I ended up in they only give you the top 10% unless you're number one. I wasn't number one,
Yep.
Nan Jostin got that. Hi, Nan, if you watch this. You deserved
Congrats,
it.
Nan. Yeah.
I, it was awesome because I had job offers all over, and I got
Yep.
to pick and choose between law firms.
Yep. So I just, again, like coming back to it, it's amazing to me. I mean, the trajectory of your life and your career coming from, blue collar background where you're thinking you just want to get a job kind of in the factory or, and you end up kind of navigating somehow into this world. Are you excited at this point about the prospect of being a lawyer and getting into the practice?
Definitely. I mean, I was really enjoying the subject matter and just arguing. I love doing that. So I did well in moot court, and I thought, oh man, I'll be a prosecutor. Maybe I'll go back and be a JAG officer and
Yep, for sure.
get that
So
retirement somehow, right?
yeah, that would make sense. But you end up, given your electronics background, I would suspect you end up as a intellectual property attorney, correct?
Yeah. So I took my first job at Morrison and Foerster, and they had a policy basically for your first year. You work in different departments. Partners fill you out. You fill out yourself out where you want to be, and then decide, right? And right off the bat, I hit it off with the chairman of the firm at the time, Mike Jacobs, and we just got along great. He was very busy with firm administration. He had some active patent litigations that were pretty big, and he really didn't have technical support on his team. So he pulled me into that, and even as a summer associate, I was working on some major things with him, and I kept in touch when I went back for my third year, and took the job offer, of course, right away, and started with him. And we were busy in the ITC right off the bat, trying cases. Rapid fire.
I have a little bit of familiarity with the ITC with IGO, where I was before, where we would sort of prosecute some of that stuff. But maybe explain for the audience just kind of what the ITC is and what that practice is like.
Yeah, the time I did it, it was basically from time to filing to trial was about 6 months, and you got to get all the discovery done during that period. You're in front of an administrative law judge, no jury. And you're proving we were the domestic plaintiff, so we were proving we had a domestic industry in the U.S. So my client was Cirrus Logic. I had to understand their chips and how they implemented the patents we asserted, and we were going against ATI, the graphics card company.
Okay.
Out of Toronto. And so it's like a regular case, except for when you get to trial, then it's very different. And of course, the discovery is abbreviated, and there's no messing around and not producing discovery or delaying it. You better get it out and fast, and do what the judge tells you to do. So that was what was nice about it. Yeah,
and that's kind of a great spot to learn, I would think, because everything's pretty intense. They're not messing around. And if I understand it correctly, the whole idea is basically you can stop products from coming into the United States, right? If you can prosecute it, then you can stop infringing products from other countries from entering the market in the United States. Is that
exactly
more or less?
When the administrative law judge entered an order, an injunction order, it went to the president of the United States, and the president ultimately says, okay, that product is barred from entering to the U.S. And so you'd have to go through the political side of it as well. And along the way, you come to settlements, and you remove your complaint and give a license, all that stuff's available.
Yep. And so you're practicing there at MoFo, one of the best firms in the world. That has to be pretty intense right out of the bat. You're getting sort of, baptized right into the legal profession with some of this intense work. Did you enjoy that? Was that sort of a good way to start your practice? What were your thoughts on sort of like reflecting on your time there?
Lawyers would probably smack me for saying this, but it was easier than it was for me in law school.
Wow.
I say that because, one piece I didn't tell you is when we moved to the Bay Area for law school, I had like a summer to kill before it started. And so I was looking around for jobs, and I took a job teaching at a technical college, just one class.
Yep.
I taught DC circuits, I think it was,
Okay.
and they wanted me to stay on, and so I ended up teaching all through law school at night.
Huh.
I taught 20 lecture hours a week.
Oh, geez. What are you doing? You got like you don't have enough on your plate. That's
Listen,
crazy.
we had two kids and one on the way. They offered insurance. They paid at the time it was 1993, and they paid $60,000 a year. So
Unbelievable.
money and insurance, and I'm going to law school for free and banking money. It was just
Wow.
the guy that I'm never going to get a chance like this again in my head, you know.
Yep.
And so I pushed myself through that.
A quick break here to thank our sponsor, Array, for making this podcast possible. The bottom line is if you're involved in a lawsuit, please reach out. Array handles the logistics for any litigation matter. They take care of forensic collection, e-discovery, managed review, record retrieval, court reporting. They even take care of legal staffing and recruiting, you name it. I'm a little biased because I'm the chief legal officer at Array, but I was also an Array client before I started working there, and they became my first call whenever I had to manage a litigation matter. Array handles all of the details of your lawsuit so you can focus on winning your case. Feel free to reach out to me directly or visit trustarray.com and we'll get you set up. Now, back to the pod.
Which
So,
is
so you basically start practicing law, which everybody talks about the grind of when you're starting, especially at a big firm like Mofo, like where you're just like grinding away and your 2,000 billable hours. This is actually easy for you now. You got one job you can focus on. I assume is that sort of the drill.
exactly. I was just going to say that. It was like
Yeah,
only one thing to worry about. I don't have any, tests or anything to administer. I just do my job. So
yeah,
yeah, it was a break of a sort,
that's
single
pretty
point.
cool.
But the
That's pretty cool.
hours the hours got really long, and as we went through trials, 300 billable hours in a month kind of became the norm around a trial for 3 to 4
Yeah,
months.
yeah,
And with little kids, my wife not having me around enough, it got really difficult for us.
yeah. So from there, so you left Morrison and Forster. You end up going to Howery,
Yeah,
which is kind of an IP juggernaut firm, if I'm
yeah.
correct. So tell me about sort of the transition to that firm and kind of what the work was like there.
Yeah, so I had been co-counsel with Howery at Mofo, and
Mm-hmm.
so I got to work with one of their senior associates who really loved that firm,
Mm-hmm.
and he was always singing its praises to me, and telling me I should come over,
Yeah.
and, and they had an office down in Southern California, and Morrison and Forster did not,
Okay.
and my wife wanted to be back home from
Mm-hmm.
the Bay Area, back close to San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
and so I went and interviewed and I loved it, and they opened
Yep.
the doors wide open for me and took
That's
me in.
amazing.
And
Yep.
so I went there and really didn't look back.
Yep. You was there a difference between a firm like Morrison and Forster and Howery? Did you notice distinctions or differences between the two practices at those different firms? What was that like?
Yeah, yeah. Morrison and Forster had more of a West Coast vibe to it, which
Mm.
was more casual dress and I don't know, just more of a friendly atmosphere in the offices as far as you know
Yeah.
competition between partners and sharing clients and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Howery was very different. Howery
Interesting.
was driven by DC. An antitrust group there was the core leadership of Howery,
Okay.
antitrust and IP, and it was tough to gain trust from those folks. It was,
Mm-hmm.
and to trust them was difficult at times too, for sure.
Interesting. And so, um, you're in, I would assume, kind of like a satellite office then in the San Diego office. The home office is in DC. Is
That's
that
correct. Yeah,
accurate? Yeah. And so, how many attorneys do you have there in the office that you're working out of?
24, I think.
Okay. Yeah. And so Morrison and Forster had to have been
Well, I
much
was at
larger.
mothership. Yeah, it was almost
Right.
300 attorneys in San Francisco. Yeah.
Yep. And what kinds of clients were you working with there at Howery? What were they into?
Right off the bat, it was electronics again. I started off right away doing cases for Bill Rookledge, who at one point was the president of the American Intellectual Property Law Association. he became my next mentor basically, and he had a client up in the Bay Area called Electronics for Imaging. They make color print controllers for matching color from your computer to your printer.
Okay.
And getting it right.
Interesting.
And so I learned all about color science and all the electronics that had to do with that. And I did their work for the next 12 years, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you were you were at Howry for quite a while, and so your practice at this point is all outside counsel work. Eventually, you navigate and into the in-house world. At what point does that come up? And tell me about that transition.
Yeah, so at Howry, as everyone probably knows who's followed the sad tale of the implosion of Howry, we had a phenomenal year in 2008. We all got paid insanely well in 2009, and I was an equity partner by then, which was wonderful. And then in 2010, the rug fell out from underneath us. And it was horrible, and there was no way we were going to be able to meet the obligations that the executive team had put us into. So everyone started to look for their exit strategy, and Shepard Mullen, I don't know if you know Shepard Mullen down in LA. Shepard Mullen needed to add some patent litigation to their practice. They didn't have very many patent litigators, but they had a lot of good tech clients. And so that was very interesting to me. And so I went there, and one of my partners, who I'd worked with closely out of the DC office, at the same time, he left Howry and went to Lenovo as their general counsel. And I had helped him in getting a client of his out of Dell to be the CEO at Lenovo. He was Bill Emilio, who was the number 2 at Dell, the COO at Dell, down in Austin. We had gotten him out of his trade secret, contract, non-compete, all that stuff for a good deal. And and so Mike was building a team there, and at first he had me as outside counsel, basically handling all of his patent litigation, which was big at Lenovo. There was a lot of it. We probably had 12, 13 cases at all times going. So that was great, and that was rolling in. But then his head of IP quit. His chief IP counsel quit. And he said, you got to take the job, even if it's just, as a stopgap for a couple of months. So I said, of course I'll help you, but I'm not leaving the firm. I'll let you pay to second me, do it. And so he did that. And a couple of months go by, and he's not even looking for anybody else. He's not interviewing. And I'm like, what the heck, Mike? And come on, man. And I get caught in this crazy squeeze between the company and the law firm, and all this work's coming in, so I'm busy, but it's just crazy.
He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing, and so at the end of the day, I said, okay, I'll do it full time, and so then it was once a month. I could stay living in Southern California, but I had to go to North Carolina, for a week a month, and then to Beijing every quarter. So I was bouncing around a lot and doing the duties of the chief IP counsel. And so I only know IP basically, litigation and IP. That's my background.
Right.
And then we get into a pretty big acquisition. We acquired NEC Computer, and I got put on the acquisition team. And I spent, a lot of time in Tokyo negotiating that deal.
Wow!
And it was an eye opener. See how business is really done.
I mean, there's a lot to sort of peel back on that. I guess one, living in Tokyo and the way that they negotiate deals, very different from the United States. And then you're starting to transition into more of that in-house sort of role where you're more of a business guy, probably. So what was all, as you kind of transition into all that sort of world, what was that like?
Well, I had an absolute prince of a role model. John Lashinsky was the deputy general counsel, and he was the one that was running the deal. And I was side by side with him through the whole thing. So I learned about all the clauses that weren't IP and everything we had to fight for and how we're going to fight for it. And we would
Yep.
plot out in the morning, okay, when are we going to get mad and walk out? When are you going to
Wow.
hit the table? When am I going to hit the table? When am I going to scream? I'm not kidding you. And we did that, and
Wow.
it was he had done it many times, and it
Yep.
was just like clockwork. It just 1, 2, 3, 4, and it just all happened. Like
Oh my God.
you had to be patient because you had to put in days and days of just listening to nonsense.
Yeah. Well, that's a massive transaction. I mean, I mean, I don't, you know, multi-billion-dollar transaction, one of the largest in, companies in the world. That's interesting to me that they orchestrated it out. The negotiations that precisely,
Oh
but
yeah.
not surprising with that much money at stake and the high level, sort of nature of a negotiation like that. That had to be an eye opener.
It was a big eye opener, and that's when the first time I started to really value consultants, business consultants, because we had advisors that were outside of the company that were helping us, steer the deal, and they were really, really insightful. And so
Yeah.
I kind of learned to milk their knowledge and get out of them what you really needed, and that was helpful to me
Yep.
later on as well.
Yep. And what was the piece of it? How much time are you spending in Tokyo, and how does that sort of influence some of the negotiations or your work experience, I guess, as opposed to like being in America?
Yeah, I think all in a couple of months of
Okay.
time there on the ground.
Yep.
Um,
Mm.
it certainly made me appreciate the art of negotiation with a Japanese company, and what
Yep.
you have to do was
Yep.
very unique, and basically right out of the textbooks. You think it's, you read about it in business school or whatever. You think, well, that sounds really bizarre, but it was bizarre.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you bring your family with you, or were you over there? I mean, that had to be pretty rough as well.
Yes, but by that point in my career, I think my wife had given up on me being around, and yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's sad but true. I kind of was gone for that whole chunk of my life.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're obviously in demand. The law firm wants you, Lenovo wants you. You're moving up the ranks, and then your family wants you. And I think that's kind of a common problem that I hear, with a lot of attorneys. Is it's like, unfortunately, it's a demanding job, and you get pulled in a lot of different directions.
Right.
Are you at any point in this process sort of rethinking what you did for your career? Are you pretty excited about kind of what you're doing?
I've always been a guy that looks back too much on the might have beens, and it's usually later on after I've already like gotten so far into something, there's no turning back, and then I look
Yeah.
back. I,
Yeah.
I thought, well, I when I hit the point where I would have been retired from the military at like age 37, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be grinding,
Yep. Yep.
another 30, 40 years.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that was a point that bothered me because I had friends that were getting out and they were retired and moving on to their second career,
Right.
Um,
Right.
but, the money was great. I'm not, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. You're having a lot of career success. It's hard to complain at that point. You're doing well. Are you still enjoying at this point sort of being in house, or are you regretting leaving the law firm life?
very, very much starting to enjoy it a lot. Just no billable hours to worry about. And the big thing for me was not having to collect.
Right. Exactly.
That was the toughest thing, especially in the downturn, to get clients to pay when they owed you millions of dollars and they don't have it. It was
Yep.
brutal, very
Yep.
brutal. I hated it. I really didn't enjoy it. I've never been good at gunning people. I just don't like it.
Yeah. No, I hear that same theme over and over. The billable hours, collecting, all that sort of stuff. And so when you're in house, you can kind of put all that stuff in the rearview mirror. So you're
But
building your career at Lenovo. Where do things go from there? After Lenovo, where do you end up?
so the CEO Bill Emilio exits Lenovo. He had basically done the startup of Lenovo. He took IBM PC and merged it with Legend PC and created Lenovo, and then took that through 5-6 years, I think it was, and built it up from peanuts to multi-billion dollar company. and now we were probably, market cap was probably around 20 billion at the time, and it's rising, and so things are going great. But he's out. They're bringing in a Chinese CEO who's then going to replace the GC. So he gets rid of the GC, which was my friend from Howery.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there like, John Lashinsky's the acting GC, but he's like, there is no way I'm staying here. I'm done. I'm going to retire.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you want the job? I'm like, no, I'm not ready for the job.
Oh, wow.
And so Mike O'Neill, who was the general counsel at Lenovo, who had left, he and Bill took a gig with a helicopter company in Vancouver, Canada. And it was a oil and gas taxi service, basically, to take the offshore oil workers out to the rigs in the North Sea, off the coast of Brazil, all the nasty places, you know.
Yep.
And so they had 400 aircraft flying in 40 bases around the world, a really big, global footprint, but just needed to hack the fluff out of it and get it ready to go IPO.
Okay. Yep.
It was privately held at the time. So I got crazy and I joined up with them. And I moved up where I am now, which is Bellingham, Washington, which is 20 miles from the border. It was a 40-minute drive to the office from here. We worked at the airport in Vancouver, the international airport.
Yep.
And there, Mike basically said, I just want to work with the board and be Bill's lawyer. You handle all legal ops and everything else. It's all yours.
Okay. Yep.
And so, I ended up with HR on my plate, with international aviation regulation law on my plate, everything you can imagine. Luckily, I had great teammates that were in different spots around the world, and we hired really good people too. I think I built a really good team there over time.
Yeah.
And we got the company cleaned up. We took out all of the questionable practices in Africa and Brazil and all that. Made ourselves Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, and got ready, and we did an IPO. And we launched the IPO in, I'm sorry, I blanked on the year. I think it was about, totally blanking on it now.
Between 2011, 2015, looks like you were there. So sometime in that time frame, I guess.
12
or 13 maybe. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And right after our IPO, we had a really bad crash. We had an aircraft was flying along, and the gearbox went out, and it dropped out of the sky and killed a lot of people.
Oh, wow.
It turns out it was a manufacturing defect. Eurocopter was the company that sold us the aircraft, and so my job then became, how do we keep our fleet airborne when half of them are their aircraft that are getting grounded?
Wow.
And it was brutal, and the company just took a pummeling, stock tanked, so the IPO, what looked great at one point, became nothing, and it just looked bad.
Yeah. Let me, non-legal question. Did you ever get up in those helicopters? Did you ever ride around in those things? What was that like?
Oh, a lot safer than military helicopters.
Really? That's interesting. Huh.
Yeah. The military helicopters, man. You get in those, and there is like hydraulic fluid leaking everywhere. And it's like, oh no, that's how it's supposed to be. That's how you know it's working good. Like, what?
That doesn't make sense. No, you're not. No, it's not.
If you saw that in a commercial helicopter, you'd freak out. Right?
Yeah. That's crazy. Okay, so the helicopter company, then you end up navigating into Logitech, which I'm very familiar with. I think most people are familiar with Logitech. I probably have, 10 Logitech devices in my house right now, as a matter of fact. So what was that like moving into a company like that?
Yeah, that was fantastic because I knew the general counsel really well. He'd been my client even back when I was still at Howery. He was at Electronics for Imaging, and he had been number 2 there, and eventually became the general counsel there. And so he was at Logitech with the the chief financial officer from EFI was now the chief financial officer at Logitech. So I knew
Okay.
the team already, basically, and some of
Nice.
the board
Yep.
members. So it was going to be like a chance for me, to get off on the right foot with the a upper management team and a board where I would have a shot at becoming general counsel eventually.
Yep.
And so I
Yep.
was excited for the opportunity.
Yep.
And I worked great with Brian. Brian Coe and I, we'd been friends since '99, I think it was. So yeah, we got along
Yep.
great.
Yep.
And he needed not only, somebody to cover the deputy general counsel job, but somebody also to cover compliance. I had been the chief compliance officer for the helicopter company because we were publicly listed. We had to have one. And so he was able to hire me into that role as well. So I had a dual role, which
Okay.
was pretty
Yep.
cool. And I
Yep.
had teams. I had teams in litigation, teams in IP. I had a great, patent lawyer who ran the patent program. Fantastic guy. And so it was a much better setup as far as the teamwork and support goes. So
Yeah.
on that level, it was awesome. And I have to say,
Yep.
our CEO was probably the nicest, most inspiring guy I've ever worked for.
Oh, that's awesome.
He was a true steward. He really
Yeah.
cared about the company, cared about the people. He would just as soon grab the front desk reception people to go to lunch as the executive team. That was how cool he was.
That's
And,
awesome.
yeah, and whenever he was walking to lunch, he wouldn't pick out certain people. He'd walk along and you'd just see somebody that was sitting along and say, "Hey, what are you doing today? You want to come to lunch with me?" And that's just how he was, and that's how he treated everybody. And so you just want to kill for the guy, right? I mean,
Always.
you do
Yeah.
anything for him.
Yeah. It's amazing when you come across a true leader like that, someone that just really cares for other people. It's amazing how you can galvanize a team of people to accomplish amazing things, and it's so inspiring to be around leadership like that. And it's our mutual friend. I will give a little shout out to David Vandegrift, who is one of the founders of Array. An amazing guy like that, and he just inspires people, every day, and he's just one of those people out of the blue that just sort of, will pick up the phone, call somebody, just say, "How you doing? Let's go to lunch." Take care of people. But it's amazing when you're around leaders like that. It's just amazing what you can accomplish in an organization. So I love hearing stories about people like that. So is he still the CEO of the company today, or what's he doing?
I think a year and a half ago, he left for the VF Corporation in
Okay.
Denver.
Yep.
It's a big clothing conglomerate. So that's
Yeah.
what yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a completely different industry. Well, and
It
I've told
really
you this. I told you this offline too. I wish that we would have known each other back when I was at IGO, because we always looked up to Logitech. We always thought that Logitech was sort of who we aspired to be at IGO, and I would have killed to be a part of an organization like that back in those days. So
Yeah, that could have been a good marriage too. I did get to do some really cool deals there at Logitech because
yeah,
although we had an acquisitions team, it got stretched thin, and so they'd known I'd done that work before, knew how to do an acquisition, at least find my way through one. And so I started doing those, and I did several at Logitech, and that was a blast. I got to buy the gaming business from Skullcandy.
yeah, yep,
A couple of the companies out of Europe and some out of Asia. So
Yep.
it was really cool experience.
Yeah, really cool. And I remember when we were talking to Skullcandy came up because Skullcandy was a competitor of ours at IGO. We had acquired a company called Ariel 7, which was sort of that same. It wasn't in gaming, but it was headphones and earbuds and things like that, and kind of like geared towards skateboarders and surfers and that whole sort of crowd. And but they were the big dog. Skullcandy was. And did really well. That had to have been a lot of fun being part of that organization, especially like you say when you got a great leader like that you're working for.
Yeah, and we picked up another great leader from Skullcandy along the way, who had left Skullcandy, and then we hired him in separate from the acquisition. It's just amazing. These guys come out of CEO roles and they step in and run a division as if it were their company, and it's just fantastic to watch, and high praise to anybody that can do that.
Yeah, it's fun when you can kind of cruise along like that. And so, so then at some point here, like I don't know if you want to tell the story, kind of what happens while you're in the middle of your career at Logitech.
Uh, um, just one quick. As it'll all dovetail into my accident basically.
Yeah.
So the headquarters of Logitech is in Switzerland,
Hmm.
although the CEO and the CFO and the GC and everybody were in California, in the
Okay.
Bay Area.
Yep.
So they needed an executive to kind of be the presence in Switzerland. And so
Hmm.
they asked me to go there and be kind of like the presence to keep our tax status, you know. It was
Oh, that's cool.
very favorable to the company. So they,
Yeah.
they sent my wife and I over there,
Wow.
gave us a beautiful apartment overlooking Lake Geneva. Just unbelievable. And for a kid that grew up in Utah in the mountains and was a skier since he was 7 years old, I was
Oh
in
my
heaven.
God.
I was in heaven because you can go skiing there all day for a fraction of the cost of here. It's owned by the cities, and
Yep.
they join together with other cities and they link their lifts together, so you can ski from town to town all weekend if you want to, and
Oh
never
my
ski the
God.
same lift twice. It's just an incredible experience.
How long? So how long were you living there?
2 years.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize that. That's amazing. And so are you guys empty nesters at this point?
We are. Our
Yeah.
youngest turned 18 when we were over there the first year, and as soon as she turned 18, she said, "I'm going home." she left and came back here. So
Okay. Man, what a great spot to sort of hang and ski. I'm a skier too. I love skiing, so that
oh,
sounds absolutely amazing.
it was heaven. And my last winter there, I got in 36 ski days. So I was taking advantage of all those
Jeez.
holidays they have in Europe.
Oh my God. So okay, so you're living there in Switzerland for
Living
two
living
years.
large. At
Yep.
the end of that time, though, I really wanted to get back home. Just we had bought our dream home. We still live in it. We live
Hmm.
on a little bay called Chuckanut Bay. From here, you can see the San Juan Islands out my office window, and
Nice.
it's a gorgeous spot on Earth. And I wanted to get
Yeah.
back to it. I still would have to go to Switzerland a lot. I mean, at least quarterly, if not more.
Hmm.
So I could always find some skiing in that way if I
That's
needed to.
awesome.
So
Golly.
I got excited to come back, and they agreed to let me come back and let me work from up here and not have to move to California.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, I was really excited. We got back. We arrived here in May, and on July 7th was the weekend after the 4th of July.
Hmm.
I had gone on this long hike with my brother who was here visiting from Utah, and my legs were sore. So I
Hmm.
wanted to stretch my legs out. I got on my mountain bike, and I'm just rolling on this easy ride. No big
Hmm.
hills, nothing scary, no single track, big forest service road, wide open.
Yep.
I come down a little small hill, nothing big, and I get to the bottom, and there's a blind right-hand turn at the bottom. I take the turn, and there's a bridge there that I forgot was there. I'd
Mm.
only ridden this route once,
Yep.
and this bridge is like right in front of me, and it's one of those bridges that doesn't have the planks in the middle of it. It's just on the sides where the truck tires go.
Oh yeah.
And I'm at an angle that's pretty bad for it because if I if I lay the bike down, I'm going to be sliding in gravel. If I
Hmm.
try to go to the left around the middle, there's no guardrail, nothing, and it's a pretty long drop into a creek there.
Oh geez.
And so I'm
Yeah.
thinking, well, if I kind of just like jump, I don't know what I was thinking. It happened so fast.
Yep.
Anyway, my tire missed the end of where it needed to go, went down in the hole, and it flipped me.
Oh
And
man.
it was taking 20 miles an hour and turning it into instant angular acceleration into the ground.
Oh man.
And I hit the ground really, really hard. And
Yep.
I, luckily I had been a paratrooper, and instantly in my mind, as soon as I felt myself crashing, cage my head and roll my head to the right and turn my shoulders away from the fall. It's
Wow.
just what you do with a parachute landing. You always do that. It's your
Yep.
optimum points of contact. And so I did that, and I hit, and it was like a truck hitting me. I mean, I'd never been hit that hard by something before. And I was like,
Yep.
And I tried to
Yep.
breathe. I couldn't breathe. There was no air at all. So I knocked the wind out of me. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to hurt so bad. Then the pain started, and
Mm-hmm.
it was nothing I'd ever felt before. And
Wow.
I remember just looking up right before I blacked out and seeing the sun coming through the trees. Then I was gone. I was out.
Jeez.
Next thing I know, I'm getting jostled, and I can hear a helicopter coming. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the rotor's beating the
Oh
air,
yeah. Yep.
and I'm like, in my daze, I'm thinking, oh, good, medevac's coming. I'm going to be okay. You
Yep.
know, thinking I was in combat or something.
Yeah.
In a training accident, and then it's like, can you turn over? And I'm like, I can't move. I could barely talk. And so they were firemen, and they lifted me and turned me over on my back,
Mm-hmm.
and they had my neck braced when they did that, and the
Mm-hmm.
pain was just sick, and I blacked out again. And I
Yep.
came to a little bit more, and they got me into the helicopter, and I don't remember anything after that till I got to the hospital, and my wife was there at the helipad.
Jeez.
And then I was
Oh
just like,
man.
just grabbed her hand, and I held on for dear life, and
Yep.
they ran the test they could here in Bellingham, and they said, you got to go to a major trauma center, and they stuck me back on a helicopter and flew me to Seattle.
Wow.
And from there I went
Unbelievable.
right into surgery for 14 hours, I think it was.
Wow. Unbelievable. And you think about like for you to go through an accident like that and to have the training, like I think about a couple things. One, your background with helicopters, you knew what was coming. Like, and the other thing is your military training and that you went into that position and that, you had actually had a fall like this, as you described earlier, when you're jumping out of airplanes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I hadn't rolled, I would be dead. It would have broke my
Unbelievable.
neck easily. The impact
Wow.
was so bad right here on my helmet. It bursted into tiny chunks. It was just
Oh my
held together by
gosh.
the webbing. I
Oh
had a
my God.
huge contusion on my head. I had a brain bleed from it.
Yeah.
Broke 12 vertebrae and severed my
Ugh.
spinal cord at my thoracic 6.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. Just amazing.
So I'm fully paralyzed from there down. It's never gonna walk again. No chance.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Man. It's just and you're I don't even know where to go from here, but the one thing that we talked about which was interesting to me is you had a ski trip planned.
Right.
Uh and
The next
tell
month
it
I was yeah.
yeah.
The next month I was going with my buddies. I was going to basically try to ski every month for the whole year, and we were going to start in Chile in August. It's their winter. So we
Yep.
had booked this thing in advance, paid for the tickets and everything. And obviously I couldn't go. And
Yeah.
my buddies weren't going to go out of, sympathy for me. And I said, no way, you go and you send me pictures and you have a good time for me. And so they
That's
went there,
amazing.
which was
That's
really
amazing.
cool.
So, what this happens, you're in the middle of this brilliant career, you're an active skier, all this, I mean, your whole world obviously is completely upside down. You survive this accident, but what is that experience like? Think sort of coming out of that, I got to think that your military background and sort of even your blue collar background and the fight and everything that you've had your whole life had to have just absolutely sort of brought you through that traumatic event.
I think so. I think it gave me the will to live and to fight through some really bad near-death experiences after the accident. I got sepsis. I ended up getting a pressure sore while I was in Seattle in the hospital there in the first week or so. And they didn't take care of it properly, and it spread before we knew it. And I was going to die from it. It was E. coli all over my body.
Oh my God.
And they even put the probe into my heart to see if it had gotten into there and all that stuff. And you're dead if it gets there. You
Oh my
can't
God.
recover from it. So I fought and fought and fought, and when the fever finally broke from that, it was like 14 days of just intensely trying to kill this infection. The infectious disease doctor came back in, and he said, Russ, I got to tell you, and I usually don't say this to anybody, but I didn't think you were going to live. Not many people do. I'm like,
Wow.
what? And he goes, but you're a fighter. And I thought, the Marine Corps got me through again.
I absolutely believe that. I think that experience, the way you grew up, your military background, the fight that you had, I mean, I just, like you said, kind of like the will to live, right? I mean, you were fighting for your life, literally, and I got to imagine that background pulled you through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. And then how did Logitech sort of handle the whole thing when this all happened? Because you're still in the middle of your career with them.
Yeah, it was tough for the team.
Mm-hmm.
They put me on short-term disability to begin with. I was still, answering questions and helping out where I could, but it was so hard.
Yeah.
And they finally said, "Well, we've got to hire somebody in. What are you going to come back?" And I don't know yet. Um,
Yeah.
and they kind of let that go on for a year. And at
Wow.
that 1 year point is when they usually cut people off, right, from the
Yep.
short-term disability.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, they said, it's up to you. You can come back. You can come back in a modified capacity, part-time, whatever works for you. And I just said, I don't think I can come back and contribute. I can't travel anymore. I can't, sit up more than 4 hours at a time.
Yeah.
It's just super difficult. And so they helped me figure out how to retire, basically. And
Yep.
what that meant is they accelerated all my stock options and gave me a nice big payout and left me on my long-term disability insurance till I turned 67. So it's
Yeah.
pretty good.
That's amazing. What an amazing organization to sort of work with you through that whole process and to kind of handle
Unbelievably
things.
kind
Yeah.
and considerate and helpful, and
Yeah.
and it was even like the CEO and the head of HR and folks were still encouraging me years later.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, truly inspiring. So today, like bringing this forward to today, tell us a little bit about kind of what you're doing today. And I know you're working with the the Micronutrient Forum and some of the things that organization does. And so talk about kind of the things that you're working on today.
You bet. So I only do pro bono work, or work for nonprofits for free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get paid for anything at this point. I have, plenty of resources to make it through, no problem now. Which is, frankly, what a blessing in this condition to have that. I have so many friends in this community
Yeah.
that are, paralyzed. They have nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they scrape by. It's sad. They
Cannot
have to
imagine.
take a lot of help from other people,
Mm-hmm.
and so I feel very fortunate, and so I like to give what I can.
Yep.
So I got invited to help this nonprofit you mentioned, the Micronutrient Forum. My neighbor down the street was the head of their audit committee. He's a longtime CFO and retired now, in his 80s actually. So he asked if I could help him with some legal questions, and of course I said, sure, I'll help you. And first couple of things weren't that big, and then it got more and more involved. And
Yeah.
they ended up having to cancel their biggest event, which is a giant worldwide conference they host every year from the nutrition community all over the world. And it's what they worked for 2 years to put this thing on. Well, COVID hit. It was in Thailand, and it got canceled because the Thai government said no inbound flights.
Jeez.
So I had to work through that and help them with the insurance company, and try to recover everything we could and keep the nonprofit afloat. And we were able to, because frankly I'd been given some great experiences at the helicopter company dealing with insurance companies, with all the crashes and things, and I just knew how they worked and what it takes to get them to make the right assessment and to finally pay out. So I was able to help them a lot. And so they said, well, would you like to be on the board? Sure. And so they put me on the board, and then I helped them form a compensation plan for their executives. Then I was the chair of the compensation committee and on the audit committee and on the governance committee. So I've been doing that stuff since. I recently came off the board as a full-time board member, but I'm still an advisory board member on the governance committee, and I still do all their legal work.
Got it.
So that's probably the
It's
right balance for me at this point.
it's a consistent theme for you in your life. It's like when people get their hands on you, they won't let you go. You start you start immersing yourself in these organizations, and then you become indispensable pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's from not paying attention to high school. Now I learn everything I can whenever I can.
Well, it's what an amazing journey. What an amazing life you've had. I just, can't thank you enough for sharing your story. It truly is inspiring. And, I know that you've inspired others. There's lots of people that you've helped throughout their career that are inspired by you and that are, that are enjoying a great career because of the way that you led them throughout so many years and so many different roles that you had. So I just, I just appreciate you telling your story, and just congratulations on your a lifetime of achievements across the board. Just amazing.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I know it's kind of sounds almost braggadocious to talk like this, but I like sharing that story because I think there's a lot of different things people can take from it.
Yeah.
It's never too late. If you can succeed if you just put your mind to it and do it. You make a goal and work towards it and make it happen.
I love it. No, I absolutely love it, and I think I know for a fact that your story, I like sharing it as well because I think it will inspire a lot of people, and really just appreciate it. So thank you. Russ Hill, thank you very much. I want to thank Array for sponsoring the podcast and making this possible so that we can share stories like this. And Russ, just thank you again for being on the show.
No problem. Have a great day.
All right, you too.